update on the rural broadband project. Right?
It was circulated in advance. If there's any particular questions, I guess
Yeah.
I can address those. We changed the date. Last month was reported at council. From now on, we'll report at the committee level, and that's just, it's more of a timing thing. So the information that we receive is more timely as opposed to being potentially 4 or 5 weeks out date like it was last month. So this is really current to 2 weeks ago, right? So it's a little more timely, although even some of the things that are in here, we checked out lost because they kind of been lost to it. So generally, it's going to be a little more accurate. Just, I guess, one of the highlights in particular highlights, it says that under 2 crossings in Ring 1 might take 8 to 10 months to get approved for permits. So in essence, that's a river crossing and I think the other one might be 2 river crossings. So what they basically will have to do is build on one side of the river, come up, spool it, build on the other side of the river, spool it, go to the next crossing, build, spool, and sink. So what it basically does is, and then once the approvals are there, they splice it together. What it does, there's a particular area, probably, we'll say 15 to 30 homes that basically normally have fiber. Until that's approved, won't have fiber because the connection isn't made. So it affects a particular segment. And the 8 to 10 months is kind of just a worst case scenario. And kind of speaking with Matt on Friday on that point, doesn't think it'll be 8 to 10 months, but that's kind of the outside. It took them as long as, I guess it's, Nova Scotia Power have to deal with Nova Scotia Environment and some of the regulatory on these, so that's why it's kind of put out there the long time frame. So under, it was in the last report, the resource person, so the job description is being worked on for that posting. Hopefully that will be complete this week. Rapid Deployment Network will launch public consultation process in July. So 2 of the sites that we're looking to build towers on, one being this building here where we would have a tower, as well as one in the northern area. Those packages will probably go out in the next week to anybody that's within 120 meters of the tower is the default perimeter for that. So registered letters will go to all properties that are affected by that. In the case of this one here, there's only 5 actual properties, and we're one of the property owners that would be affected. Department of Transportation would be affected as well. Make ready, continue to move along. One of the highlights kind of on the make ready process has been, as we've been working through that process. On a few of them, I guess when he kind of he did a deep dive on them, some of the costs that were being estimated, we were basically fixing existing problems. that were there. So it was kind of pushed back at Nova Scotia Power to say, if you have a sag problem, we shouldn't be fixing it. So they agreed to that. So our make ready costs, the revised quote will be coming back, and it's probably in the $70,000 to $80,000 range in savings on those issues. So we continue to work with other carriers to look at the transport services, so moving data, and then hopefully within the next week we'll have that firmed up with a provider. We will start some discussions with adjacent municipalities as well, just to see if there are opportunities to partner, share infrastructure, things of that nature. On the other thing, we're getting close to contracting with NCS for the actual managed operations. And on the phase one, Rock Networks, as it's mentioned here, still does not have subcontractor agreements in place for the construction. And basically it's imperative that happens. So we're working, Digital Ubiquity are working on that issue to resolve that issue within the next week, 14 days. So construction can be in because the make ready work, like the tree trimming and those activities, it's all supposed to start within the next 2 weeks on the poles and stuff. So we need to be in a position that as soon as that work is completed, then we start and fiber on poles. Hardwood Hill on the rapid deployment network, the Hardwood Hill Tower is ready for installation of initial equipment. So that equipment is soon to be on site and ready to be installed, and the rooftop microwave equipment for here will also be installed. And we have Eastlink were here last week and installed the 10 gigabit service from here to Halifax. So that's our transport from this office through to Halifax. They were back today, actually. They fixed it because they weren't getting a signal in Halifax, so the techs were here pretty much all day trying to get that operational. So that's ready to go. The various breakdown of the various components of the project as well. Budget-wise, projections are right now that we will be under budget on the phase one project as well. We're trending to be under budget on the rapid deployment network as well. And there is a map was included in the project or the report that shows the various tower locations throughout the county as well. And last month, the report did show or had a note that some of the towers were at risk. There are no towers at risk. All towers are basically where they need to be as far as the overall project scope goes and the November 2021 deadline of industry. If there are any specific questions.
Yeah, I have a few. You ready for them?
Sure.
Okay. First up, Councilor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I'd like to say that it was a pleasant surprise to get this dashboard with so much information on it. It's a great management tool, and it's well overdue, but we have it now, and it's going to benefit us greatly as we go forward. As a management tool, it's a wonderful piece of information. And there was a couple of things that in your particular highlights that stuck out as questions, and you answered most of them. But the first one is rock network contract needs urgent amendments for county's risk management. So has there been any movement on that?
Yeah, so we basically have that pretty much complete at this point. And we're actually meeting tomorrow morning to go through kind of the final version of that. And the main kind of changes are, it's around structure and how things get approved, and it's really these dashboards to some degree of approvals through the dashboard. So if a change is made in the overall design system, it generates the change directive that updates everything right across the board. It goes out for signature, so it comes to me for signature, or simultaneously it goes to Rob for signature as well. And those are the type of amendments that are kind of putting those processes and management processes in place.
Yeah, so that's great management. Second thing is that kind of stuck out at me was the procurement needs to be accelerated. Now we're going to start laying fiber soon. We have all our materials in place to do that. If this dashboard says that we need to accelerate our procurement, because it says projects are currently under spending need to increase PO size of the PO cadence established around the 15th of every month. Then it says procurement must be accelerated across the project. So we've got to speed things up in terms of procurement.
In essence, yeah.
We have a method to do that now.
Exactly. So again, the portal's the tool, right? So all the subcontractors, any subcontractor that works on the project has to be part of the overall agreement. Is they have to be part of the portal. So anything that's being done is all through that, right? So it's all about managing how the process works and really accelerating some of the bits and pieces.
Okay. And just have a couple more, if I could, Mr. Chair. And one of the things that I know as well, and you had addressed this with rock network subcontractors, they have a problem with subcontractors, getting them in place. If you've addressed that, and I'm glad it was brought up that the adjacent municipalities should be considered in some of this project, because there's synergies that might be realized from that. And the last thing I said says there, in terms of recommendations for action to revenue, the county needs to prepare to collect revenue and systems that have been implemented for collection. So it says recommendation, and it says it's been in place. So which is it? Is it recommending or is the system in place to collect the revenue?
they're being developed, at this point. So we have a pretty, I guess, robust financial side there as well. So they've been developing the system and putting the kind of the banking arrangements in place. But to my knowledge, we haven't tested that at this point, so.
And I must say that I feel much better about this whole project now that we have this information in front of us. Detailed is what you need to know. You can communicate this with our residents. So it's being managed now, which is, makes me feel much more comfortable. Thank you.
Councilor Dave Carter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to comment on Brian doing this on Friday and gave me a chance to read through it. A couple times I thought I was in the foreign language, with a lot of acronyms and I hadn't had to figure out. And like Council Turner, it does give one more assurance. The very first two items that I had flagged was saying to me had flagged that in the broad communications. A couple of, I guess, comment and a question. Market condition. Bell has been expanding this county. And I would suggest that's because they know they're going to have competition. I'm not really particularly concerned who gets services to say, deficit to the Union 7 first. I'm just concerned that we get those jobs are secure in our community. So yeah, we're going to be competition. Going to do that all along. And the fact that we're pushing forward this project is causing them competition to reevaluate their efforts as well. The other that I had flagged that Larry did not address under people. It's done with the county partnership hired at least one resource. I've been harping on that tune for several months now. We need to have good people and enough people to carry this up. And it shouldn't all be on our CIO's plate. Not saying that he's not doing his best, doing his job, saying there needs to be more resources up there. My question is, when will we be hiring resources?
Don't have a firm date, but our goal is to at least have the job description and stuff done this week. So once we have that, then we can start to kind of plan the hire, right? But that's our goal between Matt LeMay and myself is to have that completed this week. The job.
Okay, shortly after that. Okay, thank you.
Councilor One.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a number of questions if I'm asked. I gave Mark work I have particular concerns with that, especially the part of stuff we did sign off, but on the when there are the people with rock networks, subcontractors that are not being managed. It seems like everything with rock network is concerning, and I'm just wondering, do we have them under control now, or what else do we have to do if we would get control and get them more performance?
I think what we're putting in place will give us that ability to manage them to some degree. The other things our contract does have and has had from day one is the ability to claw work back and change scope. So if we get to a point that we're not getting the results we need, then we may have to look at another solution. But what we're trying to do is get them to position that they're ready to build when we're ready to build, really. So it's kind of pushing that along, like to some degree. I think they've been a little stagnant because of the make ready process, but the make ready process is moving, right? So you can't sit still because eventually that big ready process is going to end and you have to be ready to build. So it's really getting them accelerated, so when we hit that point, they're ready to go. Is what we're trying to, or utility vehicle is trying to do.
When you say clawback, do you mean clawback the word for wrong?
Yep, yep, we can do that, as well, so.
Like the business case for the land tutorials compared to local rapid offering solutions. That's saying there, didn't we already do that now, or should we have been doing that all?
Yes, so really that is, looking at that overall, building the lined churro, was based off of, to some degree, based off of co-location in Truro and then doing a fiber swap from Truro to Halifax. And that part of the equation fell off the table when the F6 networks was taken over, so they don't own the line anymore between Truro and Halifax. So it kind of changed the landscape a bit, so it's kind of evaluating whether or not it still makes sense to build to Truro, because we would still have to find transport from Truro into Halifax. We have, in essence, what we've done, we have transport to Halifax from here, they're building through Eastlink, and we basically got the quote to get us from Glasgow to Halifax. What would be our point of presence in Glasgow? We can get transport from there to Halifax. I did 100 gigabit service, so 10 times what we have in this building through. So it's evaluating, does it make sense based on those numbers that we have to actually put capital money into building that long Truro, right? It's really just comparing the operating and the capital investment. Does it make sense to do that type thing? So that's something we should have hopefully ordered for council to kind of make a decision on very shortly, whether or not it makes sense to change direction there.
Just on the rapid deployment network, the public consultation, is it going to be public consultation to just a letter for each individual thing in the next?
Yeah, so the process is defined by Industry Canada that we have to follow. So it's basically the letters going, there is for each of the sites, I think there is to be a public open house type session for each of them, I think. So the open houses may become redundant because stage one, people may not have any objections to, so the open house may not.
Okay.
Right. Type thing, but so it is a defined process, but they are scheduled open houses.
The area with the Harbor Hill Tower, that's the bell tower we're going on.
On the end.
Yes, the Harbor Hill Tower is ready for installation.
Yeah, so that's a co-location. with
Yes, so are we below the bell?
Yes.
Network?
Yes.
Does that affect, how does that affect them?
It does. So when we were looking to build our own tower there, we were looking to build to 65 meters. Our equipment was going to be at 65 meters. That bell tower was an 80 meter tower or 75 meter tower. So we've actually, our co-location grid is at 65 meters. So we're at the exact same height that we would have been with our own, and the technologies are different. So it tells you the LTE, and we're using TV white space. So
I'm sorry, we're using
TV white space.
all the white space.
Yeah. So there's no issues, no interference issues due to that. And we ended up at the same height with them.
And then, it says, site separation. Okay, we still can 100 gigabytes instead of 20 gigabytes, and it's been impossible after that, what does that mean?
So Eastlink just don't have the ability to give us 100 gigabit service, right? They can only give us a 10 gigabit service. The other carriers that we're talking to, we get quotes from multiple other carriers that can give us 100 gig service. And the one of them, like from New Glasgow to Halifax, is 100 gig service, and that same carrier can give us a second one from a point to be determined to mount it. So that basically, we always talk about resiliency. That's your resiliency right there. You have your internet's going in two different directions, right? And they're looking. That one can't really tell you where it's to or where it's from. One's in New Glasgow, the other one they're basically saying they would build out in the west part of the county, so it may be built to here. They may put it certainly here, but that's down the road. It won't happen. The one from New Glasgow to Halifax will be in 2021. It'll probably be actively able to do that within the next, we'll say month and a half. The second one to mount it is for them a 2022 project, but that's where we're at with that. But it's more Eastlink just don't have the capacity, right? They're tapped out at 10 gig.
Just on the balance here, under management and oversight, community elements, polls and make ready. The numbers they have there for last month are different than the report we got last month. So the reason for that, please a little bit. Why would they change from one report to the other? For example, my management and oversight is shown as 175, 477 last month, but they were actually 200, 773. Same with the other tiers. Differences in the I think the same thing happened with the balance sheet on the differences in the numbers for this month's.
I'm not sure, but we can verify those numbers.
Yeah.
One more. Go ahead.
Just on the map there for the pickup towers. I'm just trying to read through that. And, the yellow circle, is that telling us the number of people that will be served by that tower? Is that yellow?
Right, that is the general power antenna coverage, correct?
Line, I'm just assuming lines running from one location to the other is like a connection to them, is that what that is? The dark line running between some of the towers?
The purple line?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's basically showing to some degree, if you look at, new tower, 30-meter tower, which is basically where we're. So if you look at there's a couple of towers, there's one that shows it kind of towards the Colchester line. It's a blue tower, co-location with Stingray. So it has a direct line back to here.
Yes.
So that means there's a direct line of sight from this building to that tower. So it will relay directly from that tower to here. Same way with the Harvard Hill, it's a direct relay. The one in River John will relay to Hardwood Hill and then to here. So it just kind of shows you the path.
So the ones that stand alone, just that area that they're showing is sort of that would be the only area they'll serve, and not going to connect with any other tower.
Basically, yeah.
And
I believe that's the case. I can verify that. One day we'll have it.
and what about the ones with no co-location on them? That's, they would, but they need co-location to transfer between towers, or what's the co-location for?
No, so a co-location means the tower's not owned by us.
Okay,
So the blue ones are owned by somebody else. And the orange ones would be owned by us. So the blue ones we're simply putting our equipment on. So we have the lease agreements in place with various owners and entities, type thing. So so Hartwood Hill is Bell. The one on basically the Mount Palm area is Stingray. One in Rossfield is CPD. Piedmont, I believe, is Office. And I believe Willowdale is also the project. So they're simply just co-location agreements.
and just do that, I know the map is really hard to read, but trying to understand if District 2 has any kind of connection being made with this rapid deployment. I can't see anything on the map that indicates that our area is benefited at all from this. Is that true? Or am I reading something wrong there? So,
There's no particular, I guess, at this point, projected coverage there with the wireless at this point. Not to say that they potentially couldn't be served, but as I said last month, the towers are, because the towers are in essence relaying back to other towers, there is capacity there because, or potential bottlenecks because it's all wireless from tower to tower, and we don't have fiber at these towers, so the ability to backhaul data is somewhat constrained. So as we build our fiber network out and you start running fiber to these towers, then your capability of your towers grows, right? Your outreach, because you have the capacity to move.
do we have any plans in place to run that fiber to how many years in District 2? I guess it's a for some kind of schedule for that type of service.
Yeah, so we're actually, and if that's kind of being worked on as well, and I believe that's tomorrow. I believe we have a meeting tomorrow to kind of talk about that planning phase of being able to basically kind of show what the plan would be, expected timeframes and things of that nature. So we are working on that as well, kind of be able to give you a detailed plan on when areas might expect the service.
We were supposed to, or we were going to try based on last month. Based on this 2,000 homes, because we're looking at servicing. I didn't get the link on, it's still available.
I can send you the link, but it's a work in progress, so I wouldn't rely totally on what you see on it, but I can certainly send that link, but it is kind of a work in progress. I would say it's the best way to put it. So if you see an area that says it's not served, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not served. It's just that as kind of the project moves along, information changes or it's updated, things will change, right? I will set it up.
I think you should try to explain to the residents that the 50 is digital. Especially with that. Thank you.
This is Woods River.
When I was in my phone, I mean,
Okay. And the meeting closed.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to add to what some of the council said. I find this very good to kind of read over slowly at your own time and kind of figure some of them. There's still a lot of information in here for sure, but and this question on it, but I have just to do with other companies, I guess, under observation of market conditions. Is Bell is to provide a quote for in-county transport services. And Rogers provided a quote for in-county transport services. And more negotiations to continue in July to get firm and final pricing. And then the county should have discussions with Seaside Communications on MOR activities from this, is that a wholesale internet service provider? Is that what West Manhattan? I wasn't sure, I was guessing it was West.
I would say you're dead on, yeah.
They're in one of the jobs anyway. But so those are three companies. I'm not sure what they're gonna be doing for us. Transport, in-county transport, two of them are in-county transport, the other one I'm not. With Seaside, I'm not sure what we're looking into there, but what is our relationship? What are we looking for from those companies? What do we call in-county transport?
So in-county transport is your network data. So anything that's generated on your network, it's getting it out. So it's data that's created in Pictou County on our network, getting it out.
Out of the county?
Yeah.
Okay, and so when it says in-county, it's actually taking what's generated here and moving it out,
Exactly, moving it to the exchanges.
using their services. So we're comparing then what we're getting from one company to another here, is that what we're doing? Or it says, well, this is to provide a quote, yeah, Rogers has already provided a quote, so for the same thing, is it?
It would be for the same thing, it's to move the data. So we have, excuse me, we've received the quotes from Bell and from Rogers.
So it's for one and the same thing.
It's the exact same thing.
Same manufacturer, one of the.
We're quoting 100 gigabit service to Halifax.
Okay, and the only other one was the one with Seaside. It doesn't seem to mention that same thing. It just says that, you know, on our activities with this group. But what would we be looking for with Seaside? Similar or something different?
I believe what the more on their side is more on the internet service provider side of things. And
Being an actual internet service provider on our network.
Yeah.
There's the other two are more transporting it.
the other two are more on the operation side of the equation. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anybody else? What's wrong?
This is the sort of a related question. I'm wondering if you could give us any update in regards to the application we made to the federal government back in February, March.
The only update I can tell you on that is within I guess a week ago, or I guess since our last meeting, we did receive a letter or an email from Industry Canada, basically saying that they were looking for additional information on and it comes back to that old served and underserved equation. So we basically, I think we got the email on Wednesday, we had to reply by Friday. So we did meet the deadline and we submitted the additional information. And it was basically, the template we submitted was basically, it's kind of a, almost like a challenge document, that you can submit, to basically say, we believe these areas to be underserved, right? So what we actually submitted to them, was the 2020 data from our Sierra Internet Performance Test, which basically had that the 4,000 tests that were completed in 2020, none of them met the standard. So it identified basically 100, I think it was 100 communities within Pictou County, so the 100 GSAs that did not actually meet CRTC standard for broadband, so the 50, 10, and the 25. So, I guess, from I guess as when we were kind of working through the exercise, as Matt LeMay said, at least they read the application. Same thing, which is a good thing. So he clarified some points. So that's really the only update I have. It wasn't anything beyond that. It was more technical, another technical piece this morning. But
Are we keeping in touch with our MP in regards to this application and I guess the pending federal election? That may increase our opportunity?
I have not honestly had a conversation with them the last couple months on it. We can certainly continue that. The last discussion that I guess we did have with him was that until it's kind of made its way through technical review, there isn't a whole lot happens within the department. So it's still going through that kind of technical review. I believe they did in the federal budget, they did put more money into the universal broadband fund as well. But at this point, it's still kind of at the technical level. So I believe they had 5,000 applications from across the world. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just, I'm going to change or turn it over to Councilor Boyles, and then just a couple questions to ask. All right. Councilor Boyles. Just had a couple of, I had a few written down here, and most of them were answered. But one thing that struck me when talking about network struggling to steer the supply chain and subcontractors need to be notified with the deadline. You said that digital activity is working on this. Are they working on trying to store subcontractors, or are they? What are they working?
Both. Anything that we work, Digital Ubiquity is working on, there's a plan A, but there's always a plan B. So plan A is Rock Networks, but there is always plan B that to secure other ways of completing the project. So
And we're talking phase one, right?
Right.
So we're talking phase one there?
Phase one, correct.
Even though we're under contract with them, we can do that?
Correct, yes. We have the tools within the contract to do that.
So if it doesn't, well, it doesn't get paid for that, then.
Right.
The other thing I read here, it says rock permits. Rock needs to do permits for 2022, and need to be built up before 2021, and they're not doing this. Is this for another phase, or is this for? Let's see where it's in. Right here, yeah.
Yeah, so basically your future phases need to basically be submitted, right, to, in essence, to Nova Scotia Power and Dell. So we've got the make readies in for phase one, right? But really, when we look at that, they were submitted last November, October, November, right? So here we are 10 months after the fact, and we're just starting to see movement on them. So in order to basically be ready for future phases, that work needs to be submitted to Nova Scotia Power.
See, that's what confuses me, because right now, Line Valley's doing that work for them. They're not, we're paying Line Valley to get these make readies up and running, right?
We're paying iValley to manage the make ready process,
So manage make ready.
right?
So Broad Network is actually filling out the application, then to
Correct.
Valley's just what? The management,
So they basically, once they're submitted, manage the kind of the tracking and coordination with Nova Scotia Power and Bell. If there's things missing, they go like Guy Valley or there to make sure that the information is provided. But the builder submits the actual link ready.
is being done now.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. We all see the charges. There, how much we're paying for digital equity and I Valley, it's a lot of money, right? And it adds up all the time because every month it seems to get higher, higher, higher. So I just hope our costs there keep it down. But one other thing else, in our finances, they're digital equity buying, are they buying hardware for phase one? Does it kind of read that way?
Digital ubiquity.
Yeah, well, just in our package there tonight. That's fair.
Yeah, so it's not hardware. It's software and licensing.
Software licensing.
Yeah.
No, just, I guess that's coming up in the next.
Yeah, so they're not buying hardware.
They're just buying licensing and things like that.
Yeah, so they've secured all of these portals. It's all computer based, so the financials, like there's a program called Pluto, Zero, and then all the dashboards and all that. That's all software driven. So there's the licensing piece with that, which digital ubiquity basically secured on our behalf. So.
No, that's, everything else I did was, yeah, very easy, so. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Okay, thank you, Councilor Morris. Okay, nothing else? Move on.